What's up, my fellow Chibits? Today I'm here to bring you a manga volume review on VizBig Volume 3 of Vagabond. Now, this volume concludes up to Volume 9 of Vagabond, so if you have the individual volumes of Vagabond, read up to Volume 9 if you're currently reading with me as I do these weekly VizBig volume reviews. So anyways, this volume, lots of content, a lot of stuff to discuss, a lot of progression, a lot of character development, a lot of characterization. I mean, there's just so much going on in this volume that it's so beautiful. And as I read volume by volume now, since I guess you could say I'm 9 volumes in, I'm really growing fond of this series. It has some things I want to talk about later on this review that I do want to mention, but right now, I'm really enjoying the path of the samurai, or the path of the swordsman. Like, I've never really read many series kind of like Vagabond, because, I don't know, for some reason, I've just never read a lot of samurai series. Like, I have Kenshin right there, but I've never read Kenshin, but I've always wanted to. And I know it's also, like, similar to Vagabond in some ways, and I've just never really read a lot of series like Vagabond, and it's so cool getting to see a character start off from, like, the bottom and work itself to the top. It's really cool getting to see that, and it just feels so realistic. Like, it has all these different realistic vibes to it that you can see from a character progressing and growing stronger, not in physical sense, but as a spiritual level, where he is growing mentally. And that's what you see taking place in this volume. Like, majority of the fights taking place in this volume of Vagabond isn't really physical fighting. Like, usually when you think of fighting, you think of, like, beating the shit out of each other, slashing swords against each other and stuff like that. That's what you would think when you hear of a fight. But when it comes to Vagabond, what really gripped me with this volume was that the fights were actually inside, going on in their minds. It was a battle of wills, a battle of the spirit. That's kind of what was going on in this volume, and I've heard things like this in the past when it comes to different manga and anime. You know how samurai or swordsmen, they stare at each other, and the first person to make a move will decide the outcome. And also, it's like they're having a battle of wills, a battle of who can survive longest while they're underneath this pressure, this tension. And that's kind of what the fight was in this. Like, majority, like half of this volume was pretty much focusing on Musashi versus Inshun. I think that's his name, or Hosen. I'm just gonna call him Hosen, because that's a lot easier on me. But the master of the school, of the Hosen school or whatever, Uhanadora Musashi challenged him. And in this volume, what was really cool was that the fight wasn't actually a fight. It was just fighting mentally, and it really just shocked me how a mangaka can drag you in page after page and, like, just make you suck in the scenery of the series, like something like this, like, you know, just sucking in, like, the starry sky. It just makes you think, because you're like, when you think of a battle, you don't think of something like that was displayed in this, and it's definitely a good monumental moment for Vagabond, for readers to really know what to expect from this series. Like, you shouldn't always expect swords fights. You should always expect this battle, this internal struggle of a character trying to overcome fear, or these different struggles that they've overcome or trying to overcome throughout their entire life. Like, as we know, in the last fight that happened in, you know, the previous, you know, volume, you had to where our main male character, Musashi, he pretty much was scared. He had this demon beast called Fear creeping up on him and making him run away, become a coward, and just retreat from Hosen when he fought him in the last volume. And that's kind of, once again, another glimpse at what type of battles and struggles we should probably expect to see in Vagabond. So, getting off the point of that, what was the main reason for this fight in this volume? Like, what was the real moral, the huge thing you should really take from this fight of Musashi versus Hosen in this volume, like majority of this volume in the last volume? What did we learn? Besides, you know, learning about the fear and stuff like that in the last volume, what we learned in this volume was that Hosen was also not looking at the big picture, as was said by the monk. The monk said, like, if you look at the tree, you don't see the entire forest. If you look at, you know, a certain specific area, you won't see the grand picture of things. And that's what was going on with Hosen. He was looking at himself. He was only looking at himself. He was only looking at his strength, his power, his invincibility. He was just looking at himself, and he wasn't looking at the things around him. He was missing everything around him. And once again, that quote that the monk did, as I said when I mentioned that quote, by far one of the best quotes I have seen in the series, and probably going to be the definite quote of the series. Like, there's certain series when it comes to seinen, manga, literature, whatever, that you could really just pull out and say, like, oh my god, this is a fucking great quote. But that quote the monk said, like, if you look at the tree, you'll miss the entire forest. You look at a branch, you'll miss, you know, the leaves or whatever. Just, you know, seeing that type of quote, it really makes you start thinking about the picture of the series, and that's what Musashi had to learn in his fight with Hosen. He had to learn to look at the grand picture and realize how significant they are as human beings. Like, that's kind of what the fight turned into. Musashi was sitting here in the forest for his entire life, his training. Like, his master was the forest. And as he grew up through the forest, training from the forest, kind of, since it was his master, and he realized, you know, he needed to look at the grand picture through his training with the elder that was also teaching Hosen. The dude said, like, you should, you know, look at everything since your master, you know, is the forest. So, you had to where Musashi looked at the entire forest. He looked at the sky. He looked at the beauty. He looked at the forest, the leaves. He looked at the wildlife. He looked at the rain. He looked at everything. And in the middle of his fight, he realized how insignificant he was as a person compared to the entire picture of what this truly means in this grand scheme of everything turning, with the gears moving in the world. And that really just makes you think. It really shows you the beauty of this series and how Musashi as a character has actually grown in just one volume. In one volume, he realized how small he really is, along with, you know, what this fight truly meant. And also on top of that, Hosen had to learn this lesson of defeat, fear, to not just look at himself. He realized the reason why he lost was because he didn't know fear, or he didn't realize to look at the big picture. That is the moral of this fight. That is what I pulled out of it as a manga reader of Vagabond. That is what I yanked out of the moral dilemma of what was going on. Since you had it to where Hosen wanted to have a fight that made him in mortal danger. He wanted to be in mortal danger. He wanted to be in a fight that really risked his life, where he put his life on the line. He wanted a fight like that. He finally got that fight, and he finally realized what he's been lacking since the very beginning. And alongside of this, when Musashi does the blow to Hosen and takes him down, strikes him down, you see it to how he hits the ground in the forest. And in that scene, you see this spiritual body pop up out of Hosen, and I'm looking at it like, what the fuck is going on? Like, that was my general reaction. And when I started looking at it closely, I'm like, wait a minute, he's having an in-out-of-body experience. And I mean, this isn't something uncommon. There has been many tales, newspapers, you know, so many different books and different things describing in-out-of-body experiences. So, you can't really confirm or, you know, disapprove or anything like that when it comes to an out-of-body experience. But we got to see from the perspective of the writer, or as a character, we got to see Hosen have an in-out-of-body experience and realize, like, this self-reflection. He had, like, a self-reflection type character development where he was realizing what he's been lacking, what he's been doing. Like, his entire reason to be strong, continue to master everything he can with the spear technique and stuff like that, it was to bury his past, bury his tragedy of what his life lived. For instance, his parents dying like they did. For instance, his mother, when he was a very young age, got raped. The mother stabbed this dude, this wandering samurai, from what you can assume. The mother stabbed this dude in the eye. The dude stabbed his mother, and she died. And the father came around, cut down this wandering samurai, and also he got cut down at the exact same time. And from what you can pull from that, it's a very tragic backstory, and you had to where, you know, Hosen, he's really upset, and he kind of wanted to bury this past. He wanted to just shove it to the side and forget about it, because it was just so bad, and he wanted to get stronger just so he didn't have to look at it ever again. And he learns the issues he had when he was going down that path. So very, very great and wonderful character development for this character. Like, I really hope Hosen makes an appearance once again in the series. I hope he becomes a reoccurring character, because with this volume, just very beautiful. I've loved that arc. I've loved this arc so fucking much. It was a really good arc. It was definitely a way to demonstrate what I should expect from Vagabond. So now, moving past that point, okay, besides Musashi getting his character development, learning to be a lot better swordsman, look at the grand picture and fear and stuff like that, and then, you know, vice versa for the, you know, young master, you also move over to Sasaki, Kojiro. Sasaki, I gotta admit, Hachi, Sasaki, whatever name, Sasaki looks bad fucking ass. Like, my god, dude. Like, his face, here, let me see if I can find it here. Like, when I saw his look, I was like, bro, that looks too fucking badass. Like, okay, right here, right here. Look at that face, dude. That looks badass as fuck. That's Hachi, dude. What the fuck, man? Hachi looks like a badass motherfucker. It's like, oh god. So, Hachi, I don't know how to feel about him. Like, in this volume, he's still continuously using the name. He's using the name of Sasaki Kojiro. And he's taken upon the name, and, you know, he's kind of being dirty. He is. He's stolen this name, and these people that were coming to challenge him, he cuts them down in the back, and you couldn't really call it an honorable fight, or even an honorable thing to do as a samurai or a way of the sword, because these two dudes that were honest to God swordsmen, they just wanted to challenge Sasaki. He was taking them, they started leading the way, Sasaki just cut him in the fucking back and killed him, and that's not right. That's really not right. I mean, if you think about it in terms of honor, that's not very honorable at all for Hachi or Sasaki to do something like that at all. It's not. But you also have to factor in that, you know, Musashi, he was going to attack Hosen when he was, you know, staying in the temple. And then he had, like, this vision where his father came in front of him. He's like, you haven't changed at all since the day you tried to strike me down. You haven't changed at all. And then you had to where Musashi learned that he has changed because he didn't go to attack him and take him out like a coward. So you get to clearly see the differences of Musashi and Sasaki in this volume, of how different they are in the terms of their progression and where their characters are going in terms of the future parts of their characters. Because right now, Musashi's moving into a more honorable type of swordsman that really knows how to be calm and gentle, along with knowing the way of the sword. And then you have to where Sasaki, he's like, you know, very dishonorable. He attacks people behind their backs, and that's where his character is going to be very dirty and cheap. So yeah, very clear distinctions between these two characters, and as you could see, the declaration Sasaki made right before his little segment of this volume ended, he's like, I will one day beat Musashi Miyamoto. And I'm like, bro, so Sasaki is going to try to beat his friend, his best friend, or I don't know if you can consider him a friend anymore, Musashi. He wants to beat him and overcome him. I look forward to that. I look forward to that fight in the future, because I've heard some talk in the comments from fellow Chibits that Musashi and Sasaki are like mortal rivals. Like, they're rivals. They're big rivals in history, and if that is true, I'm really looking forward to that, to see the distinctions between these two characters and their growth as swordsmen when they finally clash, like on a battlefield or somewhere. I can't wait to finally see that. So moving past that, you also go into the part to where the Yagyu clan, I think that's how you pronounce it, the Yagyu clan, you get to find out more about them, a little bit of brief history of them, and I don't know if the history of that is the truth or not, because I don't know much about the Warring States era. I really don't. I only know certain things about it from what I've learned and picked up from anime and manga, but from what I learned, I don't know if it was actually the truth or not, but according to what this volume said, it said the Yagyu clan, they were this clan on the mountain, and I've heard about their name once before in multiple different anime, but I didn't know much about their backstory or anything like that. Like I said, I don't know if it's the truth or not, if this is proper history, because I have no idea. But if it is, though, from what we find out in this volume, is that the Yagyu clan, they avoided conflict. Like, they were in a very awful situation. In the Warring States era, they had multiple decisions to side with whoever they wanted. Like, for instance, you know, Nobunaga to, you know, Hideyoshi and then the others and stuff like that. You know, how the Yagyu clan could side with one of these warring state leaders. And they didn't really side with anyone, because if they would have sided with any of these, something bad would have happened and they would have gotten destroyed or killed. And it goes to reflect this when it comes to the mountain, because what Musashi says in this volume really goes to show you what type of life the Yagyu clan has lived. They've lived this very isolated lifestyle. For instance, you had to where Musashi says, like, the forest around here, it looks old, ancient, old, you know. And when you think about that, you're looking as a reader, you're like, who the fuck cares? I mean, it's beautiful, yes, don't get me wrong, but it's just an old forest. And when you start thinking about what he says, he's like, well, that means there's been no war here. This land has not seen war. So it's really interesting to see how the Yagyu clan is just very isolated, because they even turn away wandering samurais. They turn them away. They turn them away at the door. They don't give a shit how well known you are. They turn away all wandering samurais. And so it just shows you the isolation the clan is, and how it's going to be very interesting to see Musashi actually challenge them, since they normally don't take in fighters at all to, you know, challenge or anything like that. And speaking of that, the master of the Yagyu clan gave up his clan secret techniques, like the fighting style or sword style or whatever. He gave up his clan techniques to his son. And his son got them and now has them. So judging by the way it was being set up in this volume, it's easy to assume that Musashi is going to be versing the new head leader of the Yagyu clan. Not the old one that's currently dying and kind of sick. He's probably going to be fighting the new one that made it into the Yagyu clan back again. Finally came back from his travels and came to Musashi. So I'm assuming Musashi's going to fight this person besides the old leader that actually cut the flower. Speaking of cutting the flower, that was a really good moment of this volume, and it surprised me. Musashi noticed on a cut of a flower that the flower's cut was very different. Even though from an outsider, if you're not a good swordsman, or, you know, even not a skilled swordsman, if you're an ordinary fighter or whatever, if you look at this cut, it looks the same. Even I, as a reader, when I was sitting there reading the volume, both sides look identical. Like, when Musashi showed us both sides, I'm like, what the fuck is the difference? I was just sitting there staring at it like, what is the difference between these? I mean, he says something about the cup. I mean, like, what is the difference? And he says, like, one shows life and one doesn't. But, I mean, even now, I still don't have the full grasp of what that means. But from what you can understand is Musashi can tell by the quality of the cut of who was it that cut that flower. He knew whoever cut that flower had to be a very, very good swordsman. And Musashi confirmed his suspicions when he had that little conversation in the dojo. He's like, who cut this flower? And he's like, oh, so it was the leader of the Yagyu clan. So I'm relieved. Because if this would have been a regular swordsman at, you know, the Yagyu clan's dojo, I wouldn't have been able to challenge you, because that would mean that the leader, the master, would have been unbelievable. So you got it right there to where Musashi, once again, getting a little bit prideful, but I like that side to him, but it's really cool getting to see that. So moving on to the points of the story, oh yeah, actually, yes, there is a very interesting point I do need to go into before I get off the story topic and talk about the art to the different things going on. So, at the end of the volume, you have it to where the disciple of Musashi, he kills a dog. And personally, I don't agree with that. I don't. I really don't. No matter how young a kid is, I don't agree with that. I really don't. But from the outlook of the way it was done, this is going to be a life lesson for Musashi's disciple. And Musashi, he's kind of watching from the outside. Like right here, he's just watching. He's just fucking watching. He's watching his disciple get beat. And I'm guessing the reason why Musashi's doing that is because he needs to learn. He needs to learn what he did was wrong, but also on top of that, this kid reminds Musashi, I think, a lot of himself. Because you even had to where Otsu, she states in this volume, like, this little boy reminds me a lot of Takeo, and he does. The boy does. I mean, he's ragged, he looks like he's lived in the wilderness and stuff like that, so you gotta go figure, this boy is a lot like Musashi. And I'm looking forward to his development and what type of training he is going to get compared to what Musashi's life lived and what training he got. Judging by the way it was done, I wonder if the scenes with how, you know, Musashi tried to strike down his father or strike down, you know, Hosen in this volume, I wonder if that's eventually going to foreshadow, or that is foreshadowing, that Musashi's disciple is going to try to attack him while his guard is down. I wonder if that's what that's trying to hint at. It makes me wonder because the way that was done. Because if the disciple is a lot like Musashi, it makes me think he might try something like that. But we'll have to see. Now, that's enough with the story-wise. Getting into the artwork. My god, the artwork. I gotta talk about that artwork. You know I do. Look at that fucking coloring, man. That looks so damn beautiful. Oh my god. Vagabond never ceases to impress me with its quality of artwork. It really doesn't cease to impress me. Like, this right here, you could just see the fear in that dude's face. The top left right there, you could see the fear in that man's face as he stares at this old man. Very beautiful, man. Like, the emotions on the characters are just so damn good. Like, the quality of the artwork. Oh my god, dude. I can't get enough of it. I really can't. I'm so scared to see the later volumes when I get to that volume 12 down there. I'm scared to see that artwork because it already looks fascinating and amazing. Oh yeah, I haven't shown you guys the cover. Here's the cover, like the full cover right there. Here is the inside of the cover, right there. You see the, you see the flower. I haven't actually looked at that. You see the flower there that the leader cut. And then on the back, you have just birds. Just birds. And right here on the back of this, you have it to where I'm guessing it's Otsu and Musashi. It looks like it. I don't know. The artwork looks a little bit different from normal. But anyways, that's pretty much when it comes to that. Overall, the volume, very good. A lot of development, a lot of characterization. It's really getting me hyped up to see where the story's going to go next. And so far, a very engaging ride of Vagabond. So tell me your thoughts in the comments below. You all have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.